Everybody, where's my coffee?
Oh, we can't function
We
without
can't even
the coffee cup.
You can finish your order there. Today, we're talking about two scenarios that we observed this week that really happened. And these were anecdotes or stories that you had happened as, with some of your influencer coaching or management.
My agency girl, I don't say girls, but the ones I represent.
But further, with our influencer academy meetings we started seeing a trend, and interacting with some of these businesses, we've seen a trend that I think you all need to be aware of. And then what are some of the actions you can take, I think, to stay competitive in this space? Because I think there's a real decision point coming right now, occurring right now, for most creators who have been, trying to grow their following, or dabbling maybe, or experimenting with kind of how you want to make money as a creator. I think there's a decision point coming. So we're going to be talking about that today. So let's start with these two scenarios where that you were just telling me a moment ago, for both of your representation clients. And what were some of the insights? So let's start, I guess, with Carolyn's, and then we'll go with Visit Toronto or Travel Toronto. Give us those two scenarios that happened, and what were some of the feedback in those negotiations?
Well, we had a call with a brand, which I always recommend if you're entering in or looking at entering into a partnership. If the brand is open to it, jumping on a call with them and getting to know them and understanding what their campaign goals are, and just like starting the relationship. And in this case, this company was a startup, and they made that very clear. And they also used that point in their negotiation of a rate, and the rate was for whitelisting. I liked the gentleman very much. I thought the company was really great. They had a really great mission, and it was around kids, a product for kids and parents. So everything was like green flags, everything. And the fact that they're a startup is great too, because I think you can start a partnership early on with a company who's starting out, that there's some loyalty there. But they also lean towards wanting more of like an affiliate marketing situation where they cut sales, like a portion of the sales to the influencer as a way to compensate them, which I think is a great add-on, but not the full, it doesn't cover the full scope of work that they were asking for. And so we just get into this situation where you really want to work with the brand, but they're a startup. And what I'm hearing is, we have funds, we have investors, but we only want to allocate a certain amount of money to this influencer budget. And so we were having the conversation, like, do we hope and invest in this partnership because they're a startup and lower our rates, or agree to do affiliate marketing and get a sales cut? Or do we say, hey, we understand where you are on your journey as a business and a company, but where we are as creators, this is my rate across the board for this product and service. And like, I don't think that I should have to change that just because you're at a startup status and could really use a break on my rates.
And we were reflecting that this happened with Spark Sites within the last month.
Yes.
We were offered with a startup. We were in negotiations for some time for this invention, basically a fitness suit. We were calling it the super suit. And they were saying, we can't afford your rate in any way.
And this is for a website.
This is for a website on the Spark Sites Center. So I wanted to parallel this because a lot of creators get sucked in a silo that they think they're mistreating creators. And it's like, no, there's a dynamic going on in every industry. And it's not always someone being cheap. It's a business owner not having perspective. And so they balked at our rate. They were saying, there's $12 million at stake with this government grant. We need a government grant. And the only way to do that is with the website. So we priced them at about $6,500, which was very conservative and for what they were asking. They said we couldn't afford it. We went back and forth, and I said, well, maybe we'll do a deposit and we'll do equity. And Nicole rightly pointed out, how do they afford that lawyer who's going back and forth with you? And it's like,
and they mentioned hiring a marketing company who needed
images
or assets from the website. And we're like,
wait a minute.
Whoa, they're paying a lot of people. Not all these people are taking a down payment or, you know, some.
So on one hand, it was like, you recognize you're telling me you need the website to secure this $12 million. So technically my website is worth $12 million is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so that's the one side of what you're saying on this negotiation you had for this influencer. They're saying we really need all of this and we can't afford it. And maybe that's just how they're negotiating.
And I do believe the guy, like, to some, but I also think what you just said about where their priorities are. So to tell you what we did, we went in with her full rate of what whitelisting would be. We actually, what I did is I made it for a 3-month retainer because they were talking about her videos being used for their educational library. And we we're like, cool, we'll throw in usage rights. We'll do all that. And if you pay your 3 months in one payment, you get a $500 discount. So I thought, hey, that's doing them a favor of, you know, kind of helping them out per se by helping them give a cut. So I feel like they were heard, but we did not move on the rate outside of like the monthly. We stuck with what that is. I did offer 2 approaches too. I did like a full suite of, here's everything, and you can have all the assets, all the usage rights. But if you really need a budget friendly approach, then here's the whitelisting you asked for with none of the usage rights and none of the other stuff. So I try to accommodate.
Finding a win. And that's what we did with the website, just to parallel, is we offered a deposit and equity. And that was kind of part of that. And they didn't bite on that, but that was intimidating to them. But let's talk about the second scenario real quick. So tell us about Toronto and there was a parallel there. So tell us about that.
So part of what we do at Hotman Agency when we're doing full representation for some of our services, we'll actually have an account manager and we'll pitch on behalf of our influencers. And so we reached out to Destination Toronto and they were great. They got back right away with us, but they were very upfront and said, we don't pay influencers. We provide accommodations, food vouchers. So the whole trip will be covered. But they were pretty quick to say, you know, we don't do monetary compensation, which one I appreciated. So there's not this back and forth in these games that you can get caught up in. And it made us really clear, like, hey, is this something you want to do? And the influencer wrote back, yeah, absolutely. And it's like, cool, because it's at the end of the day, it's about what they want, the influencer. But 2, that's a big trip. And so I was just telling you, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it for the experience, for the content, for your portfolio. And some of these places don't necessarily have the same budget. I don't know how Canada works. So maybe their budgeting is different than the States too. So you kind of have to have some leniency there. But just, you know, is there some influencers out there that would say absolutely no? You know, no, I'm not going to.
And we know that, like, so part of today's episode, we're talking a little bit about the trends that we're seeing. We're trying to spot these trends so that we can equip you on how to carry yourself. And so for the longest time, I say the longest time, the last year and a half or so, it's been a big conversation of no trade deals, no deals for product. And that's obviously a very strong conversation in RVers because they're often, you know, pitched product. But also no trade deals just for travel influencers in general. And we're seeing not even pushback anymore on that. What we're seeing, I feel like, is a settling of the market. The market, like Destination Toronto, sounds like they're getting very settled and comfortable with, we have an experience that many creators want. And we're giving you that experience. We're giving you a hotel room. I mean, what are we talking to? Like several grand, depending on how many nights.
Yeah, definitely.
Depending on how many nights it is. We're hooking you up. Basically, you have your own tour guide so that you're not wandering around, but here's this destination, here's this destination. And in exchange, we're getting some imagery from that and reach, and maybe your reach is phenomenal. And so I don't know where you've landed on the great dilemma of, I'll never do trade deals. But I present for your consideration 2 major things. Number one, the market is settling, and where it's settling, in my estimate, we talked to a lot of people, is that there are fewer destinations than there are creators. And I've said for a long time, like, yeah, there's competition, but not so much competition that you can't just put yourself out there. I still stand by that. If any influencer were coming to Influencer Academy, I'd still say, go out there, pitch everyone, even if you feel like they've been pitched 100 times. However, I think creators need to gird themselves I think the destinations are in the power position.
Mm-hmm.
I think any creator that knows how to sell and learns how to sell and can sell themselves and speak to the pain that a travel destination is trying to meet or a campground is trying to meet,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can win that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be from here forward um, the wild, wild west, as it were, where like anything goes.
Well, I think what you said with the brands like getting settled,
Yeah.
also has to do with 2, 3, 4 years ago, most of those brands hadn't made an influencer program. They hadn't established their processes yet. And the rise of the influencer software is here. I mean,
There you
there's
go.
one, Rachel with Sun Outdoors just onboarded Impact, and Impact is one, which is awesome. And she's talking about all the different certifications she's getting within Impact, about her knowledge as a social media manager and maybe director at this point. But because of those two things, they can go, like, they can onboard influencers faster. They connect their account so they can get access to your analytics. Like, so much has changed in just the last 3 or 4 years that allow the brands, businesses, and tourism boards to really process a higher volume of influencers and see who they want to work with faster with more information. Because like before, it'd be like, oh, their follower count's good, and they wouldn't dive deeper into engagement rate, and they wouldn't dive deeper into where is their audience actually at. We are not going to work in Florida. We don't really want to work with influencers that have a California demographic, because
obviously
most people live in California aren't traveling to Florida, but people in New York City or New York are. So there's just so many more tools now that help these brands decide and sift through the right influencers for that campaign.
Yeah. And so that leads me to the second point, and that is, I do think it's going to get more competitive for non-niched accounts. And like I see Marissa watching right now, Marissa has a Wildleaf Wanderer.
Yeah.
That is super niche.
Very niche.
And I don't think she's going to have to worry much about competition. There's other people doing it, but the demand in that hyper niche is like figuring itself out. And monetization is honestly figuring itself out in that niche. But when we're talking about travel creators, specifically travel, whether it's RV, national travel, we're also seeing a huge trend that nearly every travel creator that we're talking to is talking international.
Yeah.
And that's a different ballgame, because like when they're like, I want to go to Spain or Portugal, but like a lot of these places do have semi-established creators at the national level.
Yeah.
And then like, well, what's going on municipally, or what's going on? I mean, it's all kind of new territory for at least American or North American creators now going abroad. There's still some things to learn there. But I think it's getting more competitive. And I think that kind of leads into something that we've teased in the Influencer Academy as infopreneurs, personal branding, alternate streams of income, building a personal brand to be a speaker or a coach.
Yeah.
Or like in Wildleaf Wanderer's case, maybe products, she's out there foraging leaves, and there's some
I was actually going to say, though, she's been spotlighting Silva, or like the area you guys live in.
Yeah.
So I bet you anything that the tourism board in that town or the county would be interested in partnering with her, because she just shows how beautiful it is there. And she showcases, I don't know that she's traveled like downtown or featured any of the coffee shops and stuff, but it wouldn't take much for them to be like, she has really good quality content and want to work with her. And so that's just a really good example of somebody who's hyper local that can still get deals.
Yeah.
But,
and you're talking $500 to $1,500 to $2,500, depending on the deal, depending on the brand. And so it's not like huge money, but it's something.
Yeah. Definitely.
And especially like in that area, I was looking, because, the Asheville, storm, I guess the floods and the flash floods, and they're still recovering from that. But places around, like just outside of that perimeter, there's a reputation that this place is devastated. But Silva, for example, wasn't really damaged.
Yeah.
And so they just want to make sure people aren't afraid to come out, because the place is still good. But this is what we're experiencing here post Helene in the Clearwater area. And I think state money and federal money is flooding into these areas from a tourism standpoint. A Wildleaf Wanderer says, need to get my follower count up first. You do not.
No, you will. Within like 30 days, people are going to catch on, but
you don't.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily follower count. And your quality of content is what's really important, and people are engaging with it.
Yeah.
So that's great. And it's, the fact that you're featuring the town, I think would win them over. Because like you said, they want to, I wouldn't travel to Asheville or even any area around because I'm just going to assume everything's devastated.
Yeah.
But then you see her account and you're like, oh, okay, things are getting back to normal.
Join me as I go from trail to coffee or something, because she collects these things and she can put them in resin. And there's a little store downtown Silva that has like drawer pulls and stuff. And it's like, it'd be super cool to see her pull a leaf, put it in resin, and then walk it downtown, like go downtown with me, but just in a very short reel. And then she goes, gets coffee.
Well, like that fire cider, that was probably a small business downtown, right?
Well, that was her. Well, the demo. Yeah. They did a demo night of that downtown, but stuff like that, but I think that's the exception that proves the rule. Yeah. That's so hyper niche, and you can hear us riff about that. Wildlife Wanderers account and hyper niche accounts like that. But I think my bigger concern is for the creator that thinks that being like, I'm a general travel creator. And in their case, they do need a little bit bigger reach because they want to go wherever. Like in Wildlife Wanderers' case, she's planted an area. She's a rep of that area. Right. But most travel creators are like, man, I'd love to take my family to Donegal, Ireland. Right. And so I want to go there. So how can I fit this? I got to fix my feed. There's a lot of things you can do. But I think the change that I want to call out for today's episode, the evolution in content creation for travel creators is that the brands and the DMOs are starting to settle on their value. You want to go and you'll always want to go. And the power dynamic is shifting towards their benefit. Yeah. And so what are some of the things creators need to do as it gets more competitive among creators all trying to go to Portugal? We know, Naomi is trying to go to Portugal, but like anyone you mentioned, she was like, oh, I was thinking about that. And it's like, man, that's going to start to get competitive. So what are the top pieces of advice we would give creators on how to get more competitive, stay competitive, and then maybe score more of these brand deals given this season change? What do you think?
So I would say this is across the board for influencers, but travel influencers specifically, I talk about this all the time. Your quality of photography and even drone footage at this point is going to be what makes you stand out. Yes. Because now the big and travel influencers have the ability to do drone footage. And so
dynamic shots.
Yeah. Dynamic shots and storytelling.
But I would also say, and I'm just thinking about Marissa's account. Yeah. She did this account of her walking a trail and she did these panning shots. Yeah. Those are good. But it fit the narrative because she's hiking a trail.
She's also storytelling. She does good. That's the difference. So some of them are not storytelling.
Correct. Some of them are like montage. Right. And it's like, well, okay. Unless you're in the Maldives and the setting delivers that's great. But a lot of you are showing the same RV park again and again. And even though trails themselves can get boring, Wildleaf found a way to visually to do the narration, like you say, do the storytelling. But the very shots themselves were not done with a fancy camera. She just took her own camera, but she has an eye for, no, this panning shot alludes to the story that I'm telling, and that's making a move. Right. And so she did this walking by a leaf thing, and it was so subtle, but it was like, that's good. Most creators aren't doing that. Trying something new always does this. They always have an eye for shots. So whether it's better equipment, or really what we're saying is do better in your content. If you got to get a camera, get it. But if you can do it with your own camera because you have a good eye, do that.
Put your phone in 4K, film content in 4K, and edit in the app. Sometimes if you go to CapCut, I'm not saying I'm against it, but like when you edit in CapCut, you can lose a little bit of that quality. Yep. So there's ways to keep it high quality in your phone.
But the 4K also allows you to do those jump cuts. Like when you zoom in on the face real quick and zoom out, you have some options when you do 4K now.
I think you're creating a style that stands out on its own. So when somebody goes to your page, like there are creators we follow, they're like, we know what their video style is, and they make a name for themselves just with that. And so that's one thing. The quality content is super important. The storytelling is important. And also like being niche. So when we look at travel influencers, sometimes RV influencers will come to me and say, I want to work with Visit Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we know that you travel, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't spotlight the places that you travel, like the cities and the small businesses that are there.
The small businesses.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for, because when you come to a new city, they're looking to, like, the tourism boards are actually there to support the small businesses. So when you show a love for the small business, that is a big perk. They want to know that you're going to go to some of the like hidden gems in town, because we all know Born and Bred gets a lot of spotlight, right? But then if you go over to Hillcrest,
not so much.
then we're trying to spread the love. So we're looking for influencers who know how to do that.
Yeah. And, you know, like we have a Carrie in Influencer Academy, who she had a semi-viral reel, viral for her accounts for all intents and purposes. And it did feature a national park. And we suspect that one took off, not necessarily because of its beauty, but because it featured a location. But honestly, unless you are in the most dynamic setting like Iceland, featuring a business is more aligned with the economic incentives of those writing checks. And so I think, like, even if you're going to a mountain town, or if you're going to, you know, like you said, a traveler, if you're driving on the highway, don't just stop at Buc-ee's unless you're courting them specifically.
Right.
Go find that local diner that's not like a dive, but is on the main strip, but is a mom and pop.
Right.
Because chances are they're part of a downtown association.
The chamber, and their conversation with the travel or the DMO of that area is like, we wish you guys would help us get traffic. Yeah.
I mean, right now, Visit Central Florida's got, it had Burger Week, then it's got Taco Week now.
Yes.
And so
that's all to drive traffic into the local restaurants. That's like the whole point of it, especially in slow season. So,
and somehow I'm everywhere. Christina. I mean, she's primed for this as a creator to go, hey, listen, let's hit all those taco spots. You know, that's the sort of client. So when you think travel, I know that a lot of people think these luxury getaways, and some of you can get that. But if that's not your grid,
that's a decision you got to make too. Like, if you want to stay at luxury places, you got to be a luxury travel blogger, and you have to claim that and then go to the luxury spot so that that's who you work with. Because if you just go, I'm a budget traveler, then guess who you're going to work with?
That's right.
You know, and that you're writing your own future with that.
Yeah. I mean, your future is writing your past, whatever your content was.
Yeah,
you know,
it is.
Who was the guy? Chris Lau, I think his name was.
Yeah.
We interviewed Chris Lau. He was the videography director for T-Bex, but he had his own reputation long before this.
Yeah.
And he and his family do specialize in luxury.
Right.
Now, mind you, that's all they put in their grid for the last 4 years or something like that.
And he has some serious upgraded equipment. He does drone stuff. He's a videographer.
He is a videographer. But here's what we're trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I think the game is getting competitive. Now, we've talked about content. We've talked about equipment. But here's the next thing. Those things are for paid collabs.
Yeah.
You don't have to focus only on paid collabs. Of course, we have cashcollabs.com. Of course, we have dmogo.io, which we're launching. Like, we have all these tools for you to chase those, because we think there's still tons of money for people willing to go out there, but it is getting competitive. And we were saying, well, is the market changing? I think it's doing what every niche does. During landscaping season in Florida, you get all these pop-up companies, and like, it's the Wild West and everyone's making money.
Yep.
But when stuff starts to get hard, it's those who are really focused on what their business model is and how they adjust to that business model who stick around. And my concern is there's a lot of creators who aren't picking a business model. They're just assuming it's collabs, but their content, their personality, what they focus on, their lifestyle does not lend itself to collabs. In fact, a lot of the creators, I don't know, I want to get your opinion on this. I've noticed a lot of the full-time travelers, they're so caught up living their full-time life, they stop seeing the newness of places, and their content's just the RV park, and they're not looking at it with fresh eyes on the adventure of it. And so I find that their content is lackluster to pitch. If I had to pitch them for a collab, I would struggle.
Yeah.
But if I had to pitch like an ebook where they had insight.
Well, if you have more to work with, like, they drop the RV, they travel, they're a travel family, and they travel because they believe in a homeschool approach and like these core beliefs. And they're helping people do the same with all these resources. Like there has to be like a really clear why that sets them apart and differentiates them from everybody else. And they still need to pick a travel niche.
You still need.
I mean,
shout out to Craig Hadley, who took a sabbatical, just getting, thinking through what was next for him and his brand.
Yeah.
And he came out saying, we're focused on travel lifestyle. And that's a little bit narrower, right? And maybe they could even take it further.
I thought he said that he was focusing on RV travel. Like he was leaning into that because he was going to be working with some RV brands, which, hey, if you're going to do that, awesome, go all in.
But the RV lifestyle travel, like what goes on a day in the life of living in an RV and upgrading, like, and really going into that. And you just have to make that commitment. And my fear is that creators think that this is a unique problem to them. This is just you accepting the fact that you're an entrepreneur with a business. Because we experienced this for the last year with our merge. We experienced this with Spark Sites. What's our niche? We experienced this with you, and you have two very clear, like, target avatars, DMOs and creators with HotMod. But even that is like there's moments of identity crisis. So I only call that out to encourage everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
Be thinking more seriously that if you are going to compete going forward, I think you need to break the mold a little bit on just focusing on collabs. I think you need to get serious that I could coach. I could create products. Shout out to A Little Wild, A Lot Free and her really pushing into physical products, info products, show from the road. What I have yet to see is a creator consistently, like everyone's going for the boho, like the boho ones are really like jealousy worthy.
What's boho?
Like we interviewed the one couple and their RV was gorgeous.
Oh yeah, the really pretty
they're gorgeous couple. They have they have drone content. They have a good design eye. I mean, they make it look so good. And they're doing fine on they had a Jeep collab or something like that. But I'm talking about, like, I do the Spark show. When was the last time you saw an RV or travel creator who just did show from the road?
I don't know. Some of them try to go live and do like, we go live at Sunday.
That's true.
But it's
Lama Leah used to try to do that.
Yeah, it's few and far between because I think you kind of get in, you're like, not a lot of people are watching, so you just kind of give up.
You just gotta say, but that's the same for anyone's podcast, right? Like, we got 4 people watching. I don't know if we should do this anymore.
We do this for us. Let's be real. Actually, we the value is more in the recycling the content, the short form. So we do it anyway.
I present for your consideration. If you're going to stick with collabs, upgrade your content, upgrade your equipment, upgrade your skills as a salesperson, start to go deep into who you're pitching and why. Are you going to go to major metropolitan areas? Are you going to go to nature areas? Like pick a niche and start like going deep into that. If you're struggling with that and don't think that you have what it takes for that, that's okay. There's still other ways to make money. As a travel influencer doing awesome things, or as any creator doing awesome things, look at your business model and ask yourself which one I'm going to do. And here's why I'm insisting on that. To be competitive, you're going to have to move fast, and you have to be consistent with certain content. And that content is dictated, I believe, partly by your voice, but also your chosen business model. Wildleaf is going to keep doing what she's doing because of her niche. And that's, I think, brilliant, and it's concise and it's easy to consume that way.
It's easy to create too, because this is her real life and she's being very authentic to who she is. Sometimes people are like, oh, I got to create this content and it's out of like what they do in a day. So it doesn't make sense and it causes a lot of anxiety. But if you are just documenting your life,
that's right.
It's gonna be more of a creative, fun process than pulling teeth. So
yeah. So stay competitive. Reach out with any questions. What other ways can they reach out to us? What's going on? Announcements, updates.
I want to say that there's still room for social media influencers.
Tons.
The hard part is getting out of that middle gap and getting to the top tier. But you can't get there without going through the mud a little bit and figuring out what your voice is and building your own brand. I can say this, I'm personally going through it right now, just trying to figure out where I fit in on Instagram and TikTok and all of that. So, but there's still so much room for influencers, and I would just challenge you, if you've ever thought about it, you should pursue it. You should try it.
Yeah. And you make a great point. I should clarify. My warning is not like, hey, the jig is up, the market's
No.
over. My message is, it's the heat's been dialed up a little bit,
Mhm.
and it's demanding you to do something you should have done all along. Be a brand of one. Own your brand.
Mhm.
Own who you are. Find out if you need to, like Wildleaf, plant yourself in a new environment. How often do we hear, like you just said, but to reiterate it, like if you like, and Tom Below's been saying this recently. If you are struggling to create content, you're not creating a life content worthy. Because you need to live a life that's content worthy to create content, to always have that inspiration, to always have stuff to capture.
Or romanticize your life. You got
Or
to, yeah.
Yeah, or that's true. Maybe you're
Yeah.
living the life you should, and maybe it's a simple life, but there's content to capture, and you just haven't found the joy in it yet. It just feels like it's the mundane.
Yeah.
So actually valuing your life. So I guess, yes, you make a good call out. I'm not saying that there's not tons of money to be made in collabs. I'm saying finding your voice, living that voice, because there are niches on niches on niches that will write bigger checks than you even imagine for smaller audiences.
Yeah.
If you just live out loud with who you are. And so that's the challenge today. Follow us, guys, at Influencer Academy. If you want to swipe our contact list, are we ready for this?
I mean, you built it. You tell me.
So we are making, like, you have all the tools you need. You have templates and canvas. If you might have the Cash Collabs toolkit, you might be an Influencer Academy. The missing element is, are you reaching the right person?
Yeah.
We've given you the right person at dmogo.io. We're going to be announcing that publicly soon, but because you watched today's show, you're one of the first that publicly announced dmogo.io. It is our growing list of people that we have verified with actual emails, many times phone numbers, personal cell phone numbers. Basically, swipe our agency contact list as we're out there talking to people. Check it out, dmogo.io, but more about that later. Check us out next week. We hope to have John Sierra around, who's a creator, artist, made massive transition into creator space, and all the wonderful things we have going. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Yeah.
HotSpark.
HotSpark.